But the real problem is that you're not playing that video only because I can explain after that. Also, it is short video, less than 40 seconds, right?
I'm not going to be told how to produce my show by playing a video. You want to produce your own show. Play it on your crap show with no audience. Meanwhile, you can tell me about the downward bias in gas that's going up. And if you don't, and tell me, no, it's about it going down, the unbonded gas that's going down causes it to go up. That was your last rebuttal. Now it's play a video. Get lost. Go on Jeran's show. Jeran will play your video. If it helps indoctrinate more idiots into believing that there's a downward bias in gas that goes up that you're yet to address 8 times after having it pointed out to you. There's no downward bias in gas that goes up, and the other unbonded particles aren't making it go up because they're going down. It's absurd. That's your last rebuttal. You've now had it 9 times. I'm not playing your video until you tell me what downward bias there is in gas that goes up.
I wanna debate with you on the video that I just posted in your main chat of Discord. That is a short video, so if you can play, because in your debate in 1943 debate, right? So in that debate you made a clip on me, but the video you was showing, that was not the video I was talking about. That was the same video. I posted that short video just in your main chat right now.
Remind us what the argument was about.
Yeah, the same argument of downward, why the helium balloon is going in all the directions, that kind of.
So you think helium balloons go in all directions?
Yeah, because I have the demonstration, and in that short video, if you can play, because what you showed in the clip when you posted that after with the debate with me, you posted another video that I was not talking about. I was talking about that video that I just posted in your main chat, and that's a short video, less than a minute.
Do you recall the actual point that I refuted your claim with? Can you repeat back to me how I refuted your claim? Because it matters not what video I used.
Yeah, because you think that if there is a downward vector, then the shape should be changed, then the balloon shape should be changed. But it's not like that, because the downward vector force that is putting that balloon, the weight of that air, right? It's very less. It will not distort the shape of the balloon. That is a matter. That is made out of a matter, right? Material.
No,
elastic material.
That was part of my argument. That wasn't my argument. Part of my argument included the idea that you could have the balloon squashed at the bottom. To example, my main point, which was the balloon itself is a container, and the gas inside that container has expanded into its containment, which would be the balloon, equally in all directions. There is no downward bias for the gas that's pressing up on the top of the balloon, forcing it to expand out and up. The container itself demonstrates the gas is moving in all directions inside the containment of the balloon. Then I exampled, if it wasn't the case, then you'd have a downward bias. You wouldn't have it with gas going up, it would all be going down. But the very fact that there is a pressure on the top of the balloon, well, what's the weight of that gas when it's going up to press up on the balloon and expand it up and outwards? Obviously, there's no downward bias. You can't ascribe a downward bias to a gas particle that's pressed. I hadn't finished. I hadn't finished. What part of I had not finished do you not understand? While I reiterate my point that you failed to paraphrase. Do you think that requires your interruption, New Moon? I want to try that again without the interruption from you? Makes me think you're not listening, given that you've paraphrased incorrectly back my rebuttal. So I'll try again. There is no downward bias for gas particles that are going up, pressing up on the balloon in its containment, the balloon. Your argument was to take the balloon, a solid, in a vacuum, and ignore the fact that inside that containment of the balloon, the gas is expanded in all directions. Fact. That was my argument. You failed to paraphrase it. Now that you've failed twice and interrupted me, I'd like you to paraphrase back my actual rebuttal to you, that would be that the gas is obviously not subject to a downward bias when it's going up. Push the balloon up and out at the top of it. That's not a downward bias. You can't ascribe... Third interruption. You can't ascribe... Third interruption. Third interruption. You cannot ascribe a downward bias to gas that is going up in that containment of the balloon. Can you paraphrase that back to me so I understand that you understand it now?
Entropic principle totally addresses my point.
No, I'm asking you to paraphrase back my rebuttal to your point that the balloon goes down in a vacuum chamber, but the gas inside the containment of the balloon expands in all directions. You seem to have ignored it.
Entropy. I'm not ignoring it. You are ignoring entropy.
Okay. Your claim isn't entropy, my friend. Your claim is a downward bias. That's your claim. Your claim is not entropy. Your claim is gravity and a downward bias. Now, if there is a downward bias... Is it just fundy muting every time I talk from this point forward, Newman? Every time I make my point, you're going to talk through the top of it at the end of it? Is that what's going to happen from here forward, Newman?
Okay.
Not okay. You are being what's known as an arsehole. That would be to say you're talking through the top of the conclusion of my statement every single time I make one. An acknowledgement of your arsehole behaviour would be nice before we move on, so that you can acknowledge you're being an arsehole and stop doing it. New Moon, I'm requesting for your affirmation that your behaviour, chanting over the top of the conclusion of every statement I make, is arsehole behaviour. Can you acknowledge your arsehole behaviour before we carry on with a reasonable conversation that's not with an arsehole? You. Can you acknowledge your arsehole behaviour so we can move on with this discussion about the gas moving up and pressing up that isn't biased downwards in the balloon? Do you want to acknowledge your arsehole behaviour so we can move forward with the upward moving gas inside the balloon, New Moon?
Yeah, that is because of second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy, where what says that you know that you will know it's based on that.
So dispersion, gas expands equally in all directions.
Yeah.
So if the sky was a vacuum, then the gas we breathe would expand in all directions into the vacuum. We'd all be dead. You were saying? Entropy, yes. So given that there's a law of entropy, gas would expand into the sky vacuum equally, like it expanded into the balloon. This kind of craps all over your idea that there's a downward bias, though, doesn't it? Entropy debunks that notion. But you weren't fighting for entropy, New Moon. You were fighting for the notion that we have a downward bias in the form of gravity. But obviously, if the gas is going up in the balloon, it's not biased downwards. Your explanation for that, entropy. Yeah, entropy would demonstrate that the sky vacuum, outer space, is fake, because the gas we breathe would fill that space, according to you and entropy.
No, the globe model, they have a different kind of excuse for that, and the excuse is like there is a gradient for that.
What kind of gradient?
So
gradient of what?
Gradient of atmosphere gradient.
Oh, that's an oxymoron. We don't have sphere-shaped air. That's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron. Pay attention. Do not talk while I talk. That is an oxymoron. Atmo means air. Sphere means shape. Air isn't in a shape. It takes the shape of its containment. Like it takes the shape of the balloon, or it takes the shape of the vacuum chamber, or it takes the shape of the sky vacuum. That would be to say that we wouldn't have any gas. That would be you interrupting. Is this painful? Is this you displaying asshole behaviour, New Moon? I'd like an apology for your asshole interruption. Go.
Yeah, I apologise for that.
Yes, fundamentalist religious zealot asshole. I am disseminating how your sky vacuum and outer space is fake. What you are doing is interrupting very rudely while I annihilate outer space, NASA, space travel, trips to the moon, trips to the ISS, trips to Mars. I've destroyed all of it with your own standard. That entropy is the explanation for why the gas is going upwards, pressing on the top of the balloon with pressure. You've added to that the globe model, reification fallacy, we don't live on a globe model, explains it by saying we have a gas pressure gradient. Well, that would be first requiring gas to have pressure and press on something like the balloon. Meanwhile, if the actual area of volume it has to contain is space, we would be dead. Gas pressure gradients is a delta of gas pressure. So it need to press on something, and outer space is not something to press on. It would be an area like the balloon that the gas would fill equally when it expands with entropy into space, leaving us dead. My conclusion: outer space is fake, debunked by you with entropy. Thank you for debunking outer space.
Oh, why you're thinking that I'm trying to debunk those space? Because I also don't believe in a space. You know that, right?
I don't care what you believe in. I'm telling you what you've debunked based on your notions of how gas go down, go boom boom. It doesn't. It expands in all directions.
Yeah, I guess expands in all directions, and it's very easy to understand. And
Yeah, but
I'm
your
not
claim
saying
is
that the downward vector is a very kind of like, even if it is like what we say, a kind of force, or there is some kind of um, there is some kind of like there is a magnetic like magnets always move to the north, right? So why it is just because of magnetic field. So there may be some kind of field, some kind of gravitational field that is coming upside down, and every matter is attracting with that kind of field, right? And that field could be anything like a unknown field or a electrostatic field or some kind of other fields, right? I don't know about that, but that exists for real. That's why things goes down. That video was showed on Globebusters. I think Jaren showed that video, and
sorry.
I put that.
Let me know
on
when you're
that.
done.
What?
Yeah, I'm waiting for
I talked
get
to
a word in
Jaren.
edgeways because you based this entire babble on there being a downward bias.
For real, that's why things goes down.
You said when there's a downward bias. So I was going to interject and ask you, what downward bias would that be when detailing the gas that's pressing up on the balloon in your example? Tell me about the downward bias you're assuming for that gas particle, please.
Yeah, if you play that video, that's why I came with
I didn't
an
ask
evidence
for you
with
to demand what I do when I produce my show. I asked you a simple question about something you inferred when you described something that Globebusters and their nonsense shite with ether and electrostatic forces and electro ether and background bollocks. All that crap that you spurted was based on the premise that there's a downward bias.
No.
Don't interrupt
No,
me. Excuse me, asshole. Don't interrupt me while I take apart the base premise that you started your nonsense waffle with about electrostatic forces that you may or may not know are there. I urge you, babble on based on the pretense that we've got a downward bias. Now, I'm redressing what you said based on the very first statement that we've got a downward bias.
The downward vector is for real. That's why things goes down.
Very first statement that we've got a downward bias that I've already debunked. And I'm going to ask you, based on the debunking I've already employed, about a particular set of gas particles that are pressing upwards on the balloon in your example. It requires you to answer me about the downward bias you infer in the gas in the balloon that is going up. Go.
Yeah.
I need you to answer about the downward bias that obviously isn't there in gas particles going up. But for your shite you got from Globebusters to work, we must infer a downward bias.
For real, that's why things goes down.
There isn't one in the gas going up, and you are ignoring my question. So, fourth time. Do you not know how this show works? When you entirely ignore my point that refutes yours and try and fundamentalist zealot mute me by chanting through me like you're doing now, it won't fly. I will repeat it until you shut your mouth and close your line and listen. And until you do that, every time people in the show see your light flashing while I'm talking, they know you're not listening. So I'll repeat it again, hopefully without the asshole religious zealot chanting through it. What, based on your prerequisite of a downward bias for Globebusters garbage to make sense, what is the downward bias in the gas pressing up on the balloon in your example? Go.
Yeah, the biggest question here is that why you're not playing.
You're not asking me a new question. You're not going to tell me what the biggest question is. You're going to answer mine about the obviously non-existent downward bias in a gas particle that isn't going down. But you can't admit that because you really want Bob's bullshit to be true. You want Jeren, who you mentioned specifically with reference to ether, and his bullshit to be true. It isn't, and when we get to the prerequisite downward bias you need, you can't answer a question about gas that goes up in your example, because obviously it's not going down to have a downward bias, it's going up. So I'll ask a sixth time. What downward bias, pray tell? Oh, Fundy, mute time when the question comes. Fundy, mute, asshole. Did you detect that I was going to be asking you a question about gas that's going up and how much downward bias it's got? Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Okay, I'm telling that. First of all, that Jeren didn't told that. And
I didn't ask about Jeren. I asked how much downward bias there is in a gas particle that is going up. I referenced the garbage you want to be true because you can't answer, so a seventh rendition. What downward bias in the gas that's going up?
Gas is going down in that video.
Sorry, I don't need to be told about the gas that's going down to make Bob and Jeren and Witsit shite make sense when my question specifically is about the gas that's going up, New Moon. Is it that your indoctrination at the cult and hands of Jeren and Witsit now requires you to fundamentalist zealot mute me while I talk about the cult of ether and how you've been duped and now insist on talking about the gas that is going down when asked about a gas that's going up?
Yeah, but it's because of buoyancy force, right? You also believe that it is, and it is a result of downward vector and some kind of
right. The up in the gas is a result of the downward vector. So the gas that's going down, that's unbonded to the other gas, completely unbonded, is making it go up. So it's going up because of the downward bias. Are you insane?
Yeah, because other gases are like more dense. That's why they are putting pressure from below. And that's why the helium that is less dense, and it's going up.
When it gets to the bits that devastate, it's downward bias. And ether, there's no downward bias in gas going up. Now, you asserting that unbonded gas particles moving in the opposite direction have influence on unbonded gas particles that are moving up. You are incorrect.
But the real problem is that you're not playing that video only because I can explain after that. Also, it's a short video, less than 40 seconds, right?
I'm not going to be told how to produce my show by playing a video. You want to piss off and produce your own show. Play it on your crap show with no audience. Meanwhile, you can tell me about the downward bias in gas that's going up. And if you don't and tell me, no, it's about it going down, the unbonded gas that's going down causes it to go up. That was your last rebuttal. Now it's play a video. Get lost. Go on Jeren's show. Jeren will play your video. If it helps indoctrinate more idiots into believing that there's a downward bias in gas that goes up that you're yet to address 8 times after having it pointed out to you. There's no downward bias in gas that goes up, and the other unbonded particles aren't making it go up because they're going down. It's absurd. That's your last rebuttal. You've now had it 9 times. I'm not playing your video until you tell me what downward bias there is in gas that goes up. Go. 10 times.
Yeah, the gas is going up. That is because of buoyancy, because of other gases.
I didn't ask why.
It, right?
I said what downward bias is there. I didn't say why is the gas going up. I said what downward bias is there in the gas, given that your prerequisite for your garbage cult-like crap that came from Globebusters, that cult-like crap requires us to pre-assume that everything has got a downward bias. Okay, if I'm going to assume everything's got a downward bias, you can explain the downward bias in the gas that goes up. Ladies and gentlemen, there isn't one! If that isn't bloody obvious by now, I don't know what is. If it also isn't obvious how unbelievably indoctrinated Bob and his Globebusters cronies are, I don't know what else is. This is how indoctrinated you are with ether. You'll deny the very premise of gas going up and insist that it's actually going down. Idiots!